Good evening. This is Zach the Apostate, and with me is Derek Evenson, former Mormon missionary, former Mormon elder, former Mormon defender of the faith. Derek resigned from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter day Saints in 1996, and several years back, Derek and I made a number of YouTube videos that were critical of that church. Derek, how many views have our videos gotten thus far in the past 5 years?
Collectively, I'd say about 2 million or so.
Yeah. Um, First off, were you ever excommunicated from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter day Saints?
No, never. I resigned from the church in 1996.
Okay. Were you ever threatened with a church court?
Never was.
All right, Derek. Many members of the LDS Church, they don't want to call it the LDS Church anymore, so we'll call it the Church of Jesus Christ. Many members of the Church of Jesus Christ, formerly known as the Mormon Church or LDS Church, believe that anyone who resigns from the Church of Jesus Christ must be an adulterer or a child molester or a fornicator or wanted to just smoke and drink. Did you resign from the church for any of those reasons?
No, none. I resigned from the church because I did tens of thousands of hours of research in order to write a book that would refute anti-Mormon claims. I was going to call this book The Book of Answers to Anti-Mormon Questions. However, after tens of thousands of hours of research, I discovered, unfortunately, that 90% of anti-Mormon claims were true. That, and that alone, is what led me to resigning the church in 1996.
Right. Do you think that most people who resign from the Church of Jesus Christ do so because of adultery or homosexuality or fornication, or they want to smoke and drink, or is it because they read anti Mormon articles or blogs on the internet?
There are many reasons why members of the church resign from the church. Some more liberal Mormons, the, for them, the church is getting too conservative or not getting liberal enough for their liking. For some people, they had bad habits such as smoking or drinking or sex addiction or whatever, and the Mormons will shun those people usually, so that people stop coming back to church. Nobody likes to be shunned. But increasingly, over the past 10 to 15 years, since the internet has become popular, tens of thousands of Mormons each and every year are resigning from the church only because they found disturbing facts about Mormon church history, and they could not find good answers to refute those facts.
What what sort of facts are you talking about?
Okay, well, I made a brief list in no particular order, and I'll just go over it really fast. Just a few things, not everything. Number one, Joseph Smith changed his accounts of the first vision, and they all seem to contradict each other. Number two, in their published biographies of Joseph Smith, his own mother, Lucy Mack Smith, and his own brother, William Smith, say that the first vision that Joseph Smith ever had was in 1823 when the angel Nephi, not Moroni, visited him and told him about the gold plates. Joseph Smith's own family didn't know about the 1820 first vision. Number three, there were no religious revival in the area Joseph Smith lived in the year 1819 or 1820. Took place in the Palmyra, Manchester area in 1823. Number four, according to Martin Harris, one of the three witnesses of the Book of Mormon, Oliver Cowdery and Joseph Smith were drunk while they translated the Book of Mormon into English. Not only that, but according to all witnesses who were present, Joseph Smith translated the Book of Mormon not using any Hebrew Urim and Thummim, but by placing a small brown stone called a seer stone into his hat, then covering his face with his hat, and then dictating to Oliver Cowdery or another scribe who wrote down what he said.
Well, let me stop you for just. I have a question. Uh, a lot of things on the internet say that Joseph Smith's his history came from ancient people from France. He was part of the monarchy in France. His ancestors were, and that they practiced witchcraft? What should we believe about stuff like that that's being said?
Well, yeah, if you go back far enough, sure, he has some French royal ancestry. I mean, if you go back 1,000 years or more, 1,500 years, but most people do if you really go back that far. Joseph Smith was uh, absolutely involved in his entire family was in folk magic at the time,
Okay, yeah.
and some that's what you're talking about. Yeah, Joseph Smith was definitely involved in folk magic.
Okay. Thanks for answering that. I grew up in the church, and that's not a story I was given growing on how the Book of Mormon was translated.
Well, I was a convert to the church at age 18. I'm now 58. I was told that Joseph Smith used the Urim and Thummim to translate the gold plate. He used his peepstone, the same stone he used to find buried treasure, to translate the gold plates into English. In fact, according to witnesses, the gold plates were nowhere to be seen when Joseph Smith spoke from his hat, and Oliver Cowdery wrote down what he was saying.
Yeah, that's not what I was taught growing up in the church.
I know. I converted the church at 18, and the church used to teach a lot of things that it no longer teaches. Also, the church has changed the secret temple endowment ceremony numerous times. In 1890 and in the year 2000, they changed it again in 2005, and again they changed it just recently in the year 2019. The church keeps changing its doctrines, its histories, and its sacred temple rites. Why?
Okay, Derek, what else do you have on your list?
Zach, I could go off at least 300 items, 300 major problems in Mormon history. List off the reasons why most researchers have concluded that the Book of Mormon cannot be literal history. I could list off the reasons why Egyptologists reject and laugh at the so-called translation of the Book of Abraham. I could list off other problems such as Adam God doctrine, the Curse of Cain doctrine, blacks in the priesthood, Joseph Smith's money digging arrests, Joseph Smith and the Kirkland Anti-Banking Society fiasco. There's so many. Joseph Smith's affair he had with 16-year-old, or the sexual mothers and their own daughters, or with his own foster daughters, the Lawrence sisters, or the sexual affairs he had with 14-year-old girls in Nauvoo. And even before that, I could make a list 300 pages long if you like, but that's not the scope of this particular video.
That's right. Tonight we're doing a follow-up video on you, and I made about 4 years ago, in 2015, called "Mormon Sex Scandals and Cover-Ups." I must say that the sound quality on that video was not very good, and I apologize for that, but we had to work with what we had at the time. Derek, what sort of feedback have you gotten from that video?
Ex-Mormons thank me for it, and Mormons usually call me a liar or a Nazi or a homosexual or pedophile or a murderer, or that I did the video because I was excommunicated for adultery, got mad, and wanted revenge against the church.
Derek, have you ever committed adultery, and were you excommunicated for the reason of adultery?
I have never in my life committed adultery or pedophilia, and I was never excommunicated for any reason. I resigned from the church in 1996 by my own free will. I was never exed, never disfellowshipped, never put on probation, and I happen to know of many men who are adulterers, fornicators, thieves, liars, pedophiles, who are still active members of the church who were never excommunicated.
I would have to agree with that. Okay, our video, Mormon Sex Scandals and Cover-Ups, now has about 60,000 views by March 2019. It's been pretty controversial. No need to repeat what you said in that video, but for our current listeners, can you give a very brief summary of what you said in that video?
Sure. I told two different true stories. The first story was about a roommate I had whom I lived with for about a year in Bellevue, Washington State. We both attended young adult ward there. He was about, during this time, 36, 37 years old and divorced. He was too old for the ward. It was a young adult ward, but he went anyway. He also went to the young adult dances in the greater Seattle area. We became close friends and confidants. He told me everything. I told him everything. He was born and raised in the church in Tacoma, Washington. He was about 7 or 8 years older than me. By the time I joined the church in Tacoma, he was already married and living elsewhere, so I never knew him in Tacoma when I lived there. My roommate in Bellevue is at Brigham Young University, 6 school years. He told me during that time that he had vaginal sex with several dozen young BYU female students, and that he had oral sex with, he said, over 300 female BYU students.
Wow.
During the 6 school years he attended Brigham Young University.
Wow. Do you think he was lying or grossly exaggerating? I mean, at BYU, students are not supposed to have sex of any kind in any form before marriage.
Yeah, at first I thought he was probably grossly exaggerating, but over time, observing him around single Mormon females, watching the females go into his room at night, stay there all night, answering the dozen or so telephone calls a day. But this is back before cell phones. We had landlines. All these calls from young Mormon women pleading with me, asking me why he hadn't called them back, and listening to them crying and telling me how much they loved him. After knowing this man for 18 months and observing his behavior and observing the behavior of young single attractive women that he attracted to himself, and I had to conclude that he probably wasn't exaggerating at all.
Wow.
I'm afraid to say.
How many young Mormon women from that young adult ward and from girls he met at Mormon young adult dances, based upon what he told you and what you observed, how many of them did he have sex with?
Based upon what he told me, at least 30 over, this was mostly oral sex, over about an 18-month period. All of them were young. I think the oldest was 23 or 24. All of them were young, attractive, active Mormon women. Not all from the ward. I mean, he'd go to all the young adult dances. 2 of them were returned missionaries who spent 18 months trying to make converts to the church.
Okay. And you told me last time that you told the bishop of the young adult ward in Bellevue about your roommate, but that he called you a liar?
Yes, he did. That was Bishop Kunzler of the Bellevue 8th Ward. Flat out called me a liar, as did the other bishops of the other young adult wards in the area that I tried to warn.
So how many Mormon bishops did you speak to about your roommate?
I met all the bishops of all the young adult and singles wards in the entire greater Seattle area, and even as far south as Tacoma, which is 40 miles south. 5 of them in total. 2 mocked me by bulging their eyes at me and shaking their heads and making funny sounds, rolling their eyes. 2 of them called me a liar, and one of them said, quote, "I find that hard to believe," close quote, which is, of course, a polite way of calling someone a liar.
Yeah. So why do you think they mocked you and called you a liar?
Strangely enough, none of these men were raised in the church. All of them, all 5 of them, had married Mormon women when they were non-Mormons in their late 20s, early 30s. They later converted to the church. Their Mormon wives told these men that Mormon women were always pure and honest, always virgin before marriage, and the men didn't know otherwise. The men believed what the wives told them. So if a stranger comes to them, I was a stranger to them, to most of them. I'm 28, 29 years old, and I tell them that my BYU graduate is having sex with dozens of young, active Mormon women. They're not going to believe them. They're not going to believe me. And they didn't. A couple of them chose to mock me in return, by bulging their eyes out at me and, making cuckoo sounds and that sort of thing. None of them believed me. I'm the pure truth.
Okay. As I told our listeners before, I grew up in a Mormon town and later moved to Salt Lake City. As I told our listeners before, I personally grew up in a Mormon town and later moved to Salt Lake City. I can testify to everyone listening that many Mormons do indeed have sex of various kinds before marriage. I won't say that all Mormons do that, but many do. And, it takes two to tango. Many young, active Mormon girls have sex before marriage. Often that means oral sex, but it can also mean vaginal sex. All Mormons who grow up in Utah or in a Mormon community would know that. Not saying all young Mormons do that, but it's fairly common, and it's common knowledge. Why do you think the Mormon wives of these Mormon bishops liked to be with their husbands?
I think they love their husbands, and I think these Mormon women wanted their husbands to believe that Mormon women were, always chaste, always honest, always virginal. You know, when young Mormon women get pregnant out of wedlock, or if they get involved with a young Don Juan, a young womanizer, they usually wind up confessing to their Mormon bishop. If they can draw tears, then the bishops conclude they have repented, and the bishops forgive them of their sins. But when the Mormon bishops have been instructed by church leaders to tell these young women the following, and this is what they tell them, quote, "If your husbands ever ask you if you're a virgin, tell them, yes, I am a virgin," close quote. And the Mormon bishops tell them this as well, quote, "If you date a non-Mormon, tell him that Mormon girls don't have sex before marriage," close quote. This is what Mormon bishops are instructed to tell girls who confess to them of some sexual sin, and they do. So this is why these men have heard all this when they first joined the church.
So, Mormon girls are basically commanded to lie to their husbands?
Correct. The girls, not all Mormon girls are commanded to do that, but the Mormon girls who do get in trouble sexually and do confess to their bishops and do go through the repentance process, i.e., confess to the bishop, tear up, say they're sorry. More from what I've seen and the people I've talked to, yes, Mormon bishops say to them, "You are forgiven." Now, if next man you meet, tell him you're a virgin. Yes, they do that.
But aren't there any Mormon girls who actually are true virgins before marriage? And by true virgins, I mean they haven't even had any vaginal or oral sex before marriage.
Okay. Based upon my research and observations of 40 years, being an active Mormon for 10 years, and then being active at church and still active with Mormon singles for about 20 years after that, I was inactive at church, but active in Mormon single dances and activities. I will say this, and this is going to be controversial. I will say that if a Mormon girl in her teenage years is sexually attractive, then an alpha male, these alpha males are also known as players or womanizers or Don Juans. If an alpha male wants that teen girl sexually, he's going to get her sexually. No exceptions. If a Mormon girl makes it to marriage with being a pure virgin, that means no vaginal or oral sex, it probably means, in my opinion only, that she was overweight or not attractive enough for an alpha male when she was a teenager.
Okay.
That's just my opinion.
Okay, so what you're basically saying is that the Don Juans pretty much get all the Mormon girls they want to have.
Based upon my observations in Mormon young adults and Mormon singles and having a number of Mormon roommates, that's from my own observations.
Okay. You also told me about a good Mormon bishop who was fired basically, by the stake presidency because he tried to have your roommate excommunicated.
Yes, his name was Bishop Johnson. He was the bishop of the Bellevue 8th Young Adult Ward in Bellevue, Washington State. After Bishop Kunzler, the one who called me a liar, left, Bishop Johnson was a very good man. He became bishop of the 8th Ward, after Kunzler left. As I said, he found out about it, what my roommate was doing. He scheduled church courts for 4 young women, but several of the young women were daughters of high counselors in the stake. And so they fired Bishop Johnson. They released him after only 6 months as bishop. And they brought back Bishop Kunzler as bishop. Bishop Kunzler was the one who called me a liar.
Okay. And what happened to Bishop Johnson?
I have no idea. I never kept in contact with him. I know he was released after, 6 or 7 months. I moved back to Tacoma after that. I'm sure Bishop Johnson's heart was broken. He was the only trying to do the right thing, and basically they fired him because he had the audacity to obey the bishop's handbook of instructions and arrange church courts for young women who had committed fornication with my roommate. However, 2 of these young women just happened to be the daughters of very wealthy Bellevue Mormon families who had blood relatives with last names all Mormons would recognize.
You mean they were related to Utah Mormon royalty?
That's exactly what I mean. It pays to have friends in high places or relatives.
Okay. Also, in the video Mormon Sex Scandals and Cover-Ups, you talk about a stake president's son who had allegedly raped several Mormon girls in the Tacoma South Stake. And then that young man was sent on a mission to Japan instead of excommunicated?
That's right. He never had a church court. One of the women he raped was an ex-girlfriend of mine.
Wow.
He was sent on a mission to Japan less than a year after the alleged rape.
Do you think the fact that he was the stake president's son had anything to do with the fact he was never had that he never had a church court, but was sent on a mission instead?
I think that had everything to do with it. Since we did that video 4 years ago, I've gotten information on dozens of other incidents where Mormon bishops and stake presidents covered up for the sons and daughters of local or general church leaders. These are the cases we've known about because they later went to secular court for one reason or another. And, once that happens, the information usually becomes public.
Sure. And where can someone find links to that kind of information?
Okay, I created a website that include links to Mormon Church sex scandals and cover-ups, various other news articles and videos by various people, and you can find all those links on the following website: churchofzion.webs.com. That is one word, churchofzion.webs.com.
Okay, I'm just going to repeat that website for the listeners. That's Church of Zion, all one word, .webs.com, churchofzion.webs.com. Okay, and we'll include a link to that website below this video in the description box as well. Okay, Derek, I have to ask you, in our old video, Mormon Sex Scandals and Cover-Ups, you claimed that a study was done at Brigham Young University, and the study found that Mormon students attending BYU admitted that they had sex before marriage, and the statistics from the study show that Mormons who attend BYU have the same rate, have sex at the same rate as the general white population of the United States. Now, that's pretty shocking. Where can someone get a copy of that study?
You can't get a copy of it. The study was done in the early 1980s. It was bought by the church for a lot of money, and the church has the copyright for it. The church did the study and not publish it. The church still has it locked away and refuses to let researchers have a copy of it. The church bought it for a lot of money only to bury it.
And how do you know this?
I know this because the Brigham Young University website told me that. I'm not kidding. A history major at Brigham Young University, a student was doing an oral history project. part of his thesis or whatever at BYU, and he heard this story. So he started investigating, and he found a BYU professor, a sociology professor, that told him the entire story that I just told you. And yes, the study was done, and no, the church did not like the results of that study. So the church bought the study and then buried it so no one could publish it. You can read all about that on the Brigham Young University Special Collections website. And a link to that BYU webpage is on my webpage at churchofzion.webs.com.
Okay, and once again, I've put that link to your website in the description page just below the video, above the comments, but below this video. Now, Derek, were you aware that many young Mormons have sex more often than no oral sex before marriage when you joined the church at age 18?
Absolutely not. No. As a young Mormon, I converted to the church. At age 18, I didn't grow up around Mormons at all. I didn't know any Mormons. I was repeatedly told as a young Mormon convert that Mormon women never have sex of any kind before marriage unless forced to by an evil male, unless they were raped. I was told repeatedly that Mormon women never lie. In fact, I was told that it was impossible for them to lie. As a young Mormon convert, I was told that Mormons were better than other people, choice, the elect of God, peculiar people, much more moral and honest than other people, even other Christians. That's what I was told.
And did you find that to be the truth?
No. Categorically, no. Mormons, Mormons fornicate, commit adultery, and steal and lie, males and females, and manipulate and gossip and backstab, about equal to the general population. I mean, there's no difference between Mormons and the general Anglo-Saxon population. The only difference with Mormons is that many Mormons will put on a mask or a false front, usually because they're trying to sell you something, either because they want you to join the church or because they want you to sign up with their multi-level marketing company. They'll put on a facade, a false front, when they want something. Be real around strangers, especially when they're trying to sell you something.
Okay.
That's what's different about Mormons.
But wouldn't you agree some Mormons are honest and moral and honest in business too?
Yes, I would agree, but no more so than the general white Anglo-Saxon population. Anglo-Saxons have a certain level of sexuality, sexual morality, and honesty, from very bad to very good, and everything in between. And most Mormons in North America are Anglo-Saxons, and they behave like all other North American Anglo-Saxons, except, as I said, when they're trying to sell you something, then they become overly sweet and nice.
All right. Derek, in our original video, Mormon Sex Scandals and Cover-Ups, you claimed that the top 15 Mormon church leaders, the top 15 leaders of the Church of Jesus Christ, are paid over $100,000 per year, plus free travel expenses. Do you stand by that claim?
Yes. In fact, years after we made that video, a group called Mormon Leaks leaked church documents showing that the top are also called, as far back as the year, were paid $10,000 a month as a small monthly living stipend, as well as full medical and dental for them and their families, as well as their travel expenses were covered. So that has been confirmed by documentation. And you can find more information about that on churchofzion.webs.com, that website.
Okay. Derek, as a new convert to the church in 1979, did they tell you what the top church leaders were paid?
Many times. As a new Mormon convert in 1979, 1980, they didn't receive a dime, and they all lived off their retirements. I was told the church didn't pay them a dime. It wasn't until I was on my mission in 1983 that I was finally told that the brethren received a quote, small monthly living stipend, close quote, from the church. I assumed that meant I didn't know, enough for food and travel. I had no idea they were being paid six figures a year.
Is there any evidence that the brethren receive even more income than the 120,000 a year plus full medical, dental, and travel?
There are rumors that the brethren receive a lot more money than $120,000 a year plus full medical, full dental, and full travel expenses. However, there's no documentation that's been released so far that proves that. So I want to remain silent on that until we see the documents on that. And if anyone releases documents on that, it would be Mormon Leaks Online who would release it, but they haven't released it yet.
Okay, and where can our listeners find Mormon Leaks online?
Okay, well, I suggest to the listeners, I have a link on my website, so just go to churchofzion.webs.com and you can find a link to Mormon Leaks and links to many other articles. I do not work for Mormon Leaks. I have nothing to do with them. I'm not connecting with them in any way. I just appreciate what they are doing.
Okay. Derek, in another video we did called Mormons and Sex, you claim that the church used to run high schools and homes for unwed Mormon girls, and that these girls were told to lie to other Mormons and lie to everyone but their parents, and to not tell their friends they are pregnant, but to tell their friends they are going to live with relatives for a year. Do you stand by those claims?
Absolutely. For many decades, an organization called LDS Social Services, later renamed LDS Family Services, ran homes for unwed teenage pregnant Mormon girls. These homes included high school or junior high school classes taught by licensed Mormon teachers in that state, the state the home was in. And the LDSSA, also called LDS Family Services, ran homes all over the country, mostly in the western states. The girls were commanded to lie to friends at school. The girls were also forbidden to attend the local ward where their home was located, where the girls' home was located. The girls were commanded to lie to future boyfriends and husbands and to tell future husbands that they were virgins.
Well, what happened to their babies?
In most cases, the girls were commanded by God through the bishop or through LDS Family Services counselor to give up their baby for adoption by a good Mormon couple who could not have children.
How much were the girls paid for their babies?
Not a dime. Not one thin dime. Neither the girl nor the parents received so much as a dime for these babies.
How do you know all of this?
I had an ex-girlfriend who went through one of these homes that was in Tumwater, Washington, south of Olympia, in the early 1970s. Also, you can find ex-Mormon women talking about their experiences in these homes on reddit.com, subreddit ex-Mormon, and also on exmormon.org online. Active Mormon women don't want to discuss these experiences because they told their husbands they were virgins, and they also don't want their current families to know that their beloved wife and mother had a kid out of wedlock when she was 15 or 16 years old. That might upset the husband and their children.
Right.
So active Mormon women remain silent on the issue and won't discuss, but some ex-Mormon women will discuss it.
Now, isn't the church...
And they have.
Okay, but isn't the church and the LDS Family Services two separate organizations?
Yes, legally they are. However, everyone who works or worked for LDS Family Services were members of the church, and they worked in close cooperation with local bishops and stake presidents, and everybody who worked with LDS Family Services knows that, and they know they work for the church, and LDS Family Services takes orders from the presiding bishopric of the church in Salt Lake City, who in turn, of course, take their orders from the First Presidency of the church.
Okay. Why why were these young teen girls told they couldn't attend the local ward but had to have sacrament meeting, Sunday school, and relief society in the homes themselves?
Okay, the brethren, the top 15 leaders of the church, are very concerned about the image of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Very concerned. They want it to look good to the outside world. You know, they want it to look good if you walk into a Mormon chapel on Sunday and say, you look around and you see all sorts of teen girls with large bellies and no husbands sitting next to them. You know, that wouldn't look good, would it?
No.
And the brethren want the Latter-day Saints to look like Latter-day Saints. So what do? You take the girls who are pregnant and out of wedlock, you take them out of the wards and you hide them until they have babies. Then you counsel them. And now in Mormonese, the word counsel means I command you in the name of the Lord, right?
Yes.
You counsel. To most of the world, counsel means advice. But to Mormon, it means a commandment from God. You counsel the girls and the girls' parents to lie to their friends at school, to lie to their other friends at church, to lie to teachers at school and say, I'm going to live with relatives for a year. No, they're not going to live with relatives. They're going to a secret home filled with pregnant, unwed Mormon girls. Then the girls are counseled to give up their babies for adoption, not paid a dime in return. Then the girls are counseled to lie again. Their future husband, I'm a virgin, and to forget about their babies forever. And the girls do that. They do it.
Wow.
They obey the counsel.
Wow. The girls obey because they think God is commanding them to lie and deceive and give up their babies in return for nothing.
You are correct.
Is LDS Family Services still running these secret homes for unwed pregnant Mormon girls?
Okay, last I heard, LDS Family Services is sending girls to Utah to stay with older Mormon couples who have spare rooms and their own children are grown and out of the house. These girls finished high school online, not at the local high school, again to hide them. And once again, the church is conducted, church on Sunday is conducted by the priesthood holder at the home, who is usually a high priest, and his wife conducts relief society. Church on Sunday in the home usually consists of the husband, the wife, and 1 to 3 pregnant Mormon teen girls.
Wow, this is... Are they still adopting the children out to tithe-paying Mormon couples who can't have children?
I've heard that many of the girls are now refusing to do that and are keeping the babies.
Okay.
I've also heard that the church is now more hands-off because some of the women have sued the church over that, and the church doesn't want more embarrassing lawsuits. Local bishops will try to find a couple to adopt, but if they can't, and if the girls want to keep the baby, and that is becoming the norm now, then the church backs off, mainly because the church knows that if the woman or the parents sue the church is going to lose a lot of money, and it's going to be in the local press. And like I said before, the church does not like lawsuits, and the church does not like bad press.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. Okay, Derek, you told me over the phone that you had a video about a Mormon high priest who confessed to his granddaughter that he had raped his sisters when children, and he was 18 years old, and that this man also confessed to molesting one of his own daughters, and possibly also his granddaughter, and that this man confessed to church leaders repeatedly, but never had a church court. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
You pretty much covered it right there. This man is a medical doctor in Idaho. He's now in his late 70s. His granddaughter, who is a master's degree student, confronted him and his wife one day at their home. He confessed all of it to her, and she recorded it. He confessed to raping his two sisters when they were 8, 9 years old, and when he was 18 years old, to one of his daughters. It's all an audio tape. I have the audio tape, and if you want to hear the entire confession on tape, just go to churchofzion.webs.com.
All right. Once again, for our listeners, there's a link to that website in the description box below this video. Now, Derek, I understand that this man, who is now a retired doctor, confessed to Gordon B. Hinckley when Hinckley was an apostle, and Hinckley told this man, complete your mission and get on with your life. Is that true?
Yes, the man himself says on the tape, on the recording, that when he was on a mission, he molested some girl. As his church policy, he had to speak with the general authority. Gordon B. Hinckley was visiting the mission and spoke to the man, who was a missionary at the time. The man claims he confessed fully to Hinckley, and Hinckley forgave him and told him to complete his mission, get on with his life. Now, President Hinckley died in 2008, and he's not here to defend himself and to give his side of the story. However, I know of some other incidents where Gordon B. Hinckley did the same thing, or worse. So it would not surprise me at all if Hinckley did tell the pedophile and rapist to keep quiet, go to BYU, and raise a good Mormon family. Hinckley is known to have told other pedophiles and child rapists the very same thing. I know this for a fact, and I'm not kidding.
Even if true, why would Gordon B. Hinckley cover up for a known pedophile who has confessed to raping his own sisters and later sexually molested his own daughter?
I can only guess. However, I have observed over the years that if you are blood related to Utah Mormon royalty, that means, high-ranking members of the church or very wealthy Mormons who are part of the Second Anointed, go through a super secret ceremony called the Second Anointing. If you're related to them by blood, you get a pass. In other words, there are certain families, certain last names, certain bloodlines that have higher privileges in the church than the normal rank and file members do. The brethren don't want you to know that because that might upset you. But there's tons of evidence for that, and some of the evidence is on my website at churchofzion.webs.com.
Okay, and that link is below. Again, Church of Zion, one word, churchofzion.webs.com. Derek, do you make any money from all the websites and videos you have done?
Not one thin dime. In fact, it costs me thousands of dollars over the years to make these videos.
So why do that? Why do you do that still?
I do it. I was a true believing Mormon at one time, and I don't know, I'm driven to reveal the truth about Mormonism to people, because I once was a believer. I was told a lot of things that were not true, and I found out the hard way, and it tore me apart. And I want, if you're going to be a Mormon and join the Mormon church and pay tithing, 10% of income, and go to meetings and go on a mission, I think people should, it's like going to a used car salesman. Tell me about this car. Oh, this car runs great. Little old lady, used to drive to church, and but you get in the car and it falls apart a block later, right? You've been lied to.
Yeah.
That's how I felt.
Okay.
I felt I'd been lied to.
Okay.
So I want to get the truth out.
Okay, Derek. Did the church leaders ever teach that God the Father came down and had physical sex with Mary, his spirit daughter, in order to create the physical body of Jesus?
Yes, they did. Mormon leaders openly taught that for at least 130 years.
Does the church still teach that doctrine?
No, not openly. The brethren believe that doctrine is too sacred to teach openly anymore. But I can assure you the brethren still believe it. And in fact, most Mormon men over the age of 60 still believe in it. because they were raised at a time when church leaders taught it openly. I was taught this doctrine in Sunday school and Institute of Religion class when I was a young Mormon convert in the early 1980s.
Wow, to me, that just sounds a lot like the story of the fallen angels and the Nephilim that they created when they had sex with the daughters of Earth. You know?
Yeah.
Anyway, what's the name of this doctrine?
Uh, the church never gave this doctrine a name other than Mormon males often referred to it as, quote, one of the privileges of becoming a god, close quote. They believe it was a privilege to have, it would be a privilege to have sex with your most beautiful spirit daughters when you become a god in the celestial kingdom. There's no name for it other than that. So I came up with a name for it. I call it the doctrine of heavenly incest.
Okay.
That God the Father and Mary had sex. The doctrine of heavenly incest.
And how did Mormon women feel about the doctrine of heavenly incest?
Surprisingly, a lot of Mormon wives I spoke with about it in the early 1980s fully supported it. They didn't mind showing their husbands sexually with other wives in the celestial kingdom, even their own spirit daughters. They saw that as one of the sacrifices to make in order to have those men for eternity.
How then was Mary a virgin if, in fact, as Mormon leaders taught for 130 years, that God the Father and Mary had literal physical sex?
I asked that, and I was told that Mary was the daughter-wife of God the Father, and that the wedding bed is undefiled, so that Mary was a virgin in that she was the legal wife of God the Father when they begot Jesus together. I was told that.
Okay, so if my parents were married when they begot me, that means my mother was also a virgin when she had me.
That is what the Mormon leaders taught for 130 years. That is what my Institute of Religion teachers taught me, and that's what my Sunday school teachers taught me.
Did you
So that's what they said.
did you believe it?
Hell no. I thought it was pure blasphemy. For many years, I thought they were teaching false doctrine. I thought they were speculating. Of course, after some research, I discovered that church presidents from Brigham Young to Spencer W. Kimball in the mid-1970s were teaching this doctrine. This doctrine was taught by Elder Bruce R. McConkie in his book Mormon Doctrine and his other published books, right up until those books were banned in the year 2008.
Wasn't Bruce R. McConkie's book Mormon Doctrine the most well-read and best-selling book in the Mormon market ever?
That is correct. In the 1980s, when I was an active Mormon, McConkie's book Mormon Doctrine was in every Mormon bookstore, I mean by the hundreds. It was in every Sunday school class, every priesthood class, every seminary class, every Institute of Religion class. Most of the missionaries brought copies with them. It was everywhere. I would guess more Mormons have read Bruce R. McConkie's Mormon Doctrine book cover to cover than they've even read the Book of Mormon cover to cover.
Why was the Book of Mormon, why was the book Mormon Doctrine banned in the year 2008?
Simple. Thomas S. Monson became the president of the church in 2008. He didn't like Bruce R. McConkie. He didn't like the book Mormon Doctrine, so he had it banned. Simple as that. The president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is the quote, quote, corporate soul, close quote. That means he is the legal dictator of the corporation of the president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. The corporation is the legal entity that owns everything. The church owns nothing. The corporation owns everything. The corporation owns BYU and all the buildings and all the temples and the meeting houses and all church-owned businesses. And the president of the church is the corporate soul, which comes from the Latin meaning one body or one man owns it all. So the president of the church owns it all. So when Monson became the president of the church, he banned McConkie's book. The book is no longer printed or sold. If if a president of the church doesn't like the word Mormon, he bans that too and changes it. You know, he's the boss. Whatever he says goes.
Now, the church no longer teaches openly the doctrine of heavenly incest. Do you believe that part of the reason for this is that the church has had a lot of problems with incest being practiced by active members?
I think so. There is a massive problem of incest in the church being practiced by active priesthood holders and their active daughters. And the doctrine of heavenly incest may have contributed to that problem somewhat. That may have been a reason the brethren no longer openly teach that doctrine.
Is
That's
there
just speculation, though.
okay? Is there any evidence that there is a huge problem in the church with incest?
Yes, there is, and I'll present the evidence for that on my website, churchofzion.webs.com, which is linked below this video.
Okay, Derek. Is there any evidence of church leaders lying or covering up for pedophiles or other sexual deviants?
There is massive evidence for local church leaders, bishops, mission presidents, and stake presidents lying to police, lying to secular courts up for pedophiles and rapists, child rapists. If those deviants are blood related to local or general church leaders, the church has paid out hundreds of millions of dollars in court costs already in awards to victims, and there are hundreds of cases still in the system.
Is it true that in many cases the church demands a gag order so that the victims cannot speak about what happened to them publicly?
That's true in most of the cases. The church pays the victims millions of dollars, but the church asks in return that the victims sign a confidentiality agreement promising to keep quiet and not talk about the case again. And let's face it, for millions of dollars, most people will sign. Thereby, once this is done, the good name of the church and the good last name of the pedophiles and rapists is preserved.
Wasn't there a case where a mission president of the Missionary Training Center in Provo, Utah, allegedly had a secret room in the basement where he took sexy sister missionaries and raped them or at least sexually molested them?
Yes, those are the allegations, but they were never proven in court because the statute of limitations ran out. So they're just allegations at this point. You can read all about that at churchofzion.webs.com, link below.
I heard of another case where the mission president of the Puerto Rican mission allegedly put all the sexy female missionaries on a few small islands, and he used to fly his private jet to those small islands to have sex with the sexy female missionaries. Is that true or not?
Yes, that is the truth. You can read about that on my website.
Wow. Wow, that is just astounding. Why would attractive 19 and 20-year-old Mormon women on missions for their church commit adultery with a 55-year-old married man who was their mission president?
I'm no longer shocked, at what Mormons are capable of, or what Mormon females are capable of, or what humans are capable of. I saw 18-year-old Mormon girls chase my 37-year-old roommate. I saw my roommate almost violently grab their butt cheeks at church. Right at church, he'd grab their butt cheeks or tell them dirty jokes in the foyer at church. After he grabbed they turned around and hugged him. After he told them dirty jokes, they laughed at church. That's the nature of women. For some women we call sluts who have sex for fun. However, for most women, 90% of women are not sluts. 90% of women have sex for love. The only problem is women always seem to love the womanizers. It doesn't matter if they're married or unmarried. It doesn't matter if they're 40 years older than the woman. Women always love the alpha male players, Don Juans, womanizers, dogs. That's the way nature has created them, and Mormon women are women, no different from any other group of women.
Have some women called you a misogynist, a hater of women because you've written such things in various blogs?
Yes, they've called me all sorts of things, much worse than that. But all I've done is to write what I believe is the truth. I've said and written what I've observed for the last 58 years. Human women are female mammals, and when it comes to mating, female mammals act in a certain way around certain types of men. You know, they all acted that way when it comes to mating. They all behave like how other female mammals behave in the mammal kingdom. Mormon women are female mammals, and they will act like all other female mammals, and they will always mate with the alpha males, the womanizers, the players, the Don Juans, the womanizers. They will always mate or try to mate. That's what their DNA tells them to do. In the African American community, these men are called dogs, like R. Kelly. Women love them and can't stay away from them, and that applies to all women, not just Mormon women. President Bill Clinton was a dog. I mean, he hated him? No, they loved him. President Trump is a dog. Does that mean he couldn't get a date? No, he had to beat women off with him with a baseball bat. Look in the news at what's going on with rapper R. Kelly. They claim to have videos of him as having sex with 13-year-old girls, more than one at a time. Does that mean he could never get a date? No, it means the opposite. Mormon women are just women, no better, no worse than any other group of women. That's what observation has proved to me. No, they're not all sluts. Only 7% of Mormon women are sluts. But all of them love the womanizers. That's been proven to me over and over again.
Okay, now, Derek, most people who leave the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints become atheists or agnostics. They lose faith in all prophets and religion. Did this happen to you?
No. I've had too many paranormal experiences in my life to not believe in God or the unseen world. After leaving the church, I became a Baha'i for a few years, but that didn't stick. Later, I became a Daheshist, a follower of Dr. Dahesh, the miracle-working prophet of Lebanon.
I remember that. Can you tell us more about Dr. Dahesh of Lebanon?
Yes, but that's for another video. I put a link about Dr. Dahesh of Lebanon on my website, churchofzion.webs.com, below.
That's right. Anyone who wants to watch more videos about Mormon sex scandals and cover-ups or get more information about Dr. Dahesh of Lebanon, you are welcome to go to churchofzion.webs.com, which is linked below in the description box. Would you like to see more videos created by the team of Zach and Derek? If so, please think about donating to our PayPal account, which is linked below. Please drop us a dime if you have the time and want to see more Mormon secrets revealed. Links to our other videos we've made in the past years is also at churchofzion.webs.com. Please give this video a thumbs up. Please subscribe if you want to see more. Please leave your comments below in the comments sections. We'd love to read them. Thank you, Derek. Thank you, listeners. Good night.